Yeah, they will cover it. All right, everyone. It's about that magical time for us to prepare to start the Smart City, the inaugural Smart City Chatter networking and panel discussion on all things our future. Okay. Ladies, I could pull you all in front. I could pull you all in front. Yes. All right, everyone. Good evening, and thank you all for joining us. So we are GNC Labs, the GNC Labs ecosystem, and the Center for Business, and we are believers in the future of Trinidad and Tobago, believers in the future of the Caribbean, and we feel like some action is needed to ensure that this place that we love has a bright and prosperous and inclusive future. So based on that, this evening, we are going to dig into the concept, and for some it will be an introduction to what a smart city is. And we are not even here to talk about the technology, which is why I have asked people to be here who are experts in human capital, because the future is a decidedly human endeavor. So we don't necessarily want to dig into the tech except to acknowledge that it is happening. The technological revolution, the fourth industrial revolution, is happening before our eyes, and we all need to find a space, an inclusive space, in this shared digital future. So I would call upon the co-founder of Smart City Charter to do a quick introduction so that we can get directly into a quick introduction of the panelists, so we can get directly into our panel discussion. May I present the beautiful and talented Mr. Kyron Newton? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all on behalf of GNC Labs and Smart City Charter for taking the time to be here this afternoon. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our first ever panel. So we have Mr. Jonathan Bhagan, the president of the Greater Arima Chamber of Commerce. Jonathan Bhagan is an attorney at law and the president of the Greater Arima Chamber of Commerce, where he advocates for business growth, digital transformation, and community engagement. He co-founded Operation Global Sex Offenders Registry to strengthen regional efforts in combating human trafficking. Mr. Bhagan holds an LLB from the University of West Indies and a legal education certificate from the Rebooting Law School. He is an associate fellow of the Royal Commonwealth Society and has authored books such as Water from Calvary and Sharona's Justice. His efforts in human rights and legal reform have been featured by CNN and Fox News. Mr. Jonathan Bhagan, thank you so much for joining today. We also have Ms. Fayola Nicholas. Ms. Nicholas is the Vice President of Institutional Advancement at the College of Science, Technology, and Applied Arts of Trinidad and Tobago, COSTAATT. Ms. Nicholas, where she leads initiatives in educational outreach and institutional growth. With over 20 years of experience in marketing, she has worked with companies like Coca-Cola, Unilever, and Carib Brewery. Ms. Nicholas holds an international MBA from the University of the West Indies Arthur Lockjack Global School of Business and is a doctoral candidate at the Grenoble École de Management in France. Please pardon that terrible French accent. She is also an adjunct faculty at Lockjack GSB and supports sustainability efforts through the NGO HRMATT. Thank you again, Ms. Nicholas, for being here. And to round and give us a perfectly rounded panel discussion, we have Ms. Cindy Wilson, the Advocacy Officer of the Human Resource Management Association of Trinidad and Tobago, HRMATT. Ms. Wilson is not only the Advocacy Officer of the HRMATT Association, and she brings nearly 20 years experience in HR across various industries, including media, manufacturing, and FMCG. She has held senior roles at organizations like Angostura Limited, focusing on HR transformation and employee engagement. Ms. Wilson holds a master's in global HR management from the University of Liverpool and a BSc in management studies from the University of West Indies. She's a certified facilitator and holds credentials in change management and balanced scorecard methodologies. Ms. Cindy Wilson. So I would like to take this opportunity to once again thank everyone, thank our panel for coming, and I want to hand over to our facilitator, Mr. Gerard Llanos. Mr. Llanos is the lead technology adoption specialist, an AI consultant, and the senior AI trainer at GNC Labs. He's a seasoned AI consultant, specialize in technology adoption and business strategy. And as a founder of GNC Management, he supports SMEs with digital transformation and operational efficiency. He's also the founder of Foundry Caribbean, an NGO focused on AI policy and education, leading initiatives like the AI 100 TT to promote AI literacy among youth in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Llanos remains a key advocate for technological advancement in the Caribbean. So once again, I'd like to thank the panel and hand it over to Mr. Llanos.
All right. All right. Who's heard this smart city term being thrown around? Let's see if we can set a baseline for understanding of the jump-off point. Show of hands. Smart city, any? Yep? No? Yes? Okay. So, context. And we always try to set context because if we can agree that we have an issue, then we can agree that it needs addressing. So, the smart city revolution has been happening globally, maybe since about 2007. A smart city is a development model where a municipality or a community, a city, a town, takes a data-centric approach to governance and to day-to-day operation. And one of the major thrusts of smart cities or communities is to create a framework for a digital economy. So we have the Ministry of Digital Transformation and different organizations in Trinidad and Tobago who are working on creating our digital economy. And I only found out during the planning of this particular event that Arima, interestingly, is a pilot. It's a running pilot. It's called Connected Arima. That is funded and being executed in conjunction with the Ministry of Digital Transformation and the Ministry of Urban Development. So this isn't theoretical. It's happening. I started this smart city conversation because there is a part of my professional life where I consult for project managers and contractors and those kinds of people. So we see terms of references and we see tender documents, etc., that refer to a mandate for Port of Spain to be a smart city by XYZ date. I don't want to speak above the regulators or the authorities of the city on that matter when it comes to Port of Spain. But we can say definitively that the people on this panel, and everybody can hear my voice, and get up online and Google Connected Arima, and you will see that there is a running pilot. Interesting journey in development. Please allow me to set the baseline for this, developing this particular program. There are people from that group in the room. I shared a picture of the robot. Does anybody know there's an actual robot in Arima Hospital right now? Like a robot? So, the crazy thing about Rex, I call him Rex, is that if you sit down in the lobby, now Rex is there to onboard patients. If Rex finally stand up looking like you don't know what you're doing, Rex will come and ask you what you want. This is not a prop. This is an actual automated or data-enabled process within a health institution. And if you look deeper, you will see that there is Wi-Fi access throughout Arima from the hospital going straight into the downtown areas. And there are a number of integrated services that are rolling out. We're not here to talk about the technology. But if you can take anything away from what I am saying, take that this smart city revolution is on the way in our country right now. It's not science fiction. It is not theoretical. And the people I shared this with were freaked out. And I am not talking about 5 CXC O-levels sweeping the road people. We are talking about engineers, we're talking about medical practitioners, high-level professionals who were, at least in that private conversation, unaware the extent to which this is rolling. And many of them gave voice to technical aversion or aversion to technology. This underscores, in my opinion, and just for some context, what we have at the onset of this panel discussion this evening are representatives from education, the private sector, and HR. Within the room, we have various academics, various business interests, various professionals who may be able, through our Q&A session, to add their voice to what is actually happening in our space. I want to posit, and I would start the conversation with the person most involved with developing the youth of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. I would start the conversation by attempting to ask, do our young people have a future in this emerging digital economy? And is education, what is education doing to prepare for this palpable transition? And what are some of the challenges that we believe we face in education? And in the room who can add something to that conversation, but I put it across to you, Fayola. What are your views and what's been your experience? Because we know that COSTAATT has been building some bridges when it comes to technology. But to what extent do you think the preparation is working?
Hi. Afternoon, everyone. So I can only speak to the tertiary level of education. I cannot speak to primary and secondary school level. In terms of our students, and in Trinidad and Tobago at the tertiary level, the future is going to come whether or not we prepare them for it. All right? It is imperative for us to prepare them for it. And it is not necessarily in terms of teaching them how to use new technology, but more in terms of exposing them in terms of the technology that exists today. The technology that I was exposed to when I was doing my undergraduate is outdated. But that, in fact, by the time I graduated and I entered the workforce, it was new technology altogether. And technology changes at a rapid pace, yes? So it's not necessarily about teaching them particular tools and how to use it, but more in terms of building a particular mindset so that they're able to keep up with the changes and that they're open to the changes that are inevitably going to come towards them. We see the back and forth right now, particularly in the area of ChatGPT, AI, writing papers, whether or not it is ethical, unethical. AI is a tool. That is all it is. At some point, a calculator was a tool, and they thought it was unfair for accountants to be using calculators rather than doing the math in their brains. ChatGPT is a tool, okay? It is our responsibility to teach them how to use that tool responsibly, ethically, to protect themselves, and so that whatever they're doing it in a more efficient manner. So in terms of if we are preparing our students for a future that is digitally enabled, I know that at COSTAATT we are. We have created a new position called a VP of Digital Transformation. We have gone through a renaming of a number of our schools or faculties to include digital, and we are reviewing all our curriculum so that it includes digital in it. So in terms of preparing them, it is preparing them for the changes that are happening and happening even more rapidly.
May I ask, to what extent are they accepting change in their world?
So, in terms of the students and them accepting the change, they're open to it. It is more difficult actually to have the staff and the faculty be open to the change. Simply because this is not how they have been accustomed to teaching the youth. The youth are hungry, open, and ready for it. They want the future. They want the future now. All right? So the hardest part is getting the team to change and to offer the new technology and the new approaches to the students.
Okay. So in my experience, and I am one of the few people who is dealing with that field of tech adoption that treats with the strategic and emotional elements of adoption with teams. And I know that there's a great level of cognitive dissonance that professionals across the board are facing. And I mean, those are situations that we hope more organizations create forums to address, because it is a change management exercise of some complexity. So, and while we're on the issue of change management and allowing for staff development and evolution of how we do things, perhaps, Ms. Wilson, you could weigh in on what some of your experiences have been in championing or modulating how organizations adapt to the rapidly evolving technological landscape. And we're just talking about within organizations, because this still has to be linked to a wider ecosystem of normal everyday citizens. But that wider ecosystem are people who exist in companies, who exist in schools, exist in institutions, who use facilities. So starting at the organizational level, could you share with us some of your experience on the matter?
All right, so first off, I want to talk to the preparedness of employees for the changes, technological advancements, employees within the organization, as well as those now entering the workforce. There's a large leap from school, tertiary education, to coming into the organizational space and being able to function. So I know Fayola indicated that, COSTAATT in itself is doing work to prepare students. I think that we take too long, that we're waiting too late to be able to, start implementing and, exposing children to things like coding, analytics. If you're looking at media now, you're seeing kids in Asian countries doing magnificent things at very, very young ages. And our children are still, preparing for SE. So, that is a discussion that I'm sure that we could continue. But in terms of, that change management and preparing organizations for, the changes in terms of skill development, I think that oftentimes there's a lot of resistance. Our regulatory framework as well provides some of that resistance, because organizations have to go through many hoops to be able to, change their ways of work, perhaps restructure because of technology. You have to, especially if you're in a unionized environment, you have to work with a union to execute some of those changes. And that in itself is a hindrance, because the unions themselves have not evolved in the way that businesses have evolved. And whilst HR might be doing the work to, put developmental things in place, Fayola hit the nail on the head. It's really a mindset for learning and continuous learning. And I don't think that we are set up. for the future. They've not themselves taken responsibility to, do the work that gets them ready for the future as well. So it's a multi-layered, question that you've asked, and we could go on and explore that in detail, but again, that mindset of continuous learning and development is something that we need to instill from young. It can't wait until you get into the organization and realize that change is an everyday part of your growth with an organization. Yeah.
Zero, but I can't help but speak like that because I primarily listen between Mr. Bhagan and Ms. Wilson about the posture of organizations after challenges that I think many people have identified. And we've been talking about AI for a minute now. We've been talking about technology for a minute now. And I think that we're looking for cues on what our posture should be and what we should actually be doing in organizations. Should we be speeding up? Should we be slowing down? Should we be raising the bar? Should we expect more? Now, I run a small business. So the appetite or the resilience other organizations may have. So for instance, I can't afford to wait a year to see if maybe somebody grows into their role. At least in my business reality, somebody has to hit the ground running when they come into my organization. And I can tell you my story of adoption initially as a good spark to Jonathan and Cindy picking up the baton of this. ChatGPT became publicly available in November of 2023. And I immediately picked up on it. And I immediately told my staff, interestingly, I saw it today. I did something called a loom. You can record simple procedures for your organization. And I explained what ChatGPT was, why it changed everything, why we need to work together in a different manner, and what the end result of it is going to be. And that was in December 2023. My staff, except for one guy who's still with us, did not last a month after that conversation. And it didn't last a month simply because what I was talking about was insanity. How I could ask you to do something in 5 minutes that you're accustomed taking half of the day to do. And that was, in that moment, for two people, unemployment was better than adaptation. And that sort of started to guide me towards how much work is needed in this space. So, grounding it into the practical, and I see Mr. Bhagan has a mic, and I am going to give Ms. Wilson back my mic. Can we arrive at a practical posture for business people, many of whom are in this room, whether in a managerial capacity or running their own shop? What is the practical posture and the practical steps that should be taken as it relates to making your organizations competitive in the world of rapid technological advancement and also in the world of rapid urban transformation through smart city development?
Okay, let me just say one thing, right? So your experience was that reluctance of your team members to get on board with utilizing AI. And I would want to suggest that in many organizations, whether the company has put forward that, there's this tool, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever tool you want to use is available, that a lot of employees are already using it, and whether or not the organization itself has prepared itself through the definition of policies, through preparing, training employees on how to ethically use it, how not to compromise company data, etc. Even if your organization has not done that, most employees are already utilizing these tools, whether they're using them effectively, efficiently, or not. The fact is that they're being used, and by not putting yourself in a position, and when I say yourself, I'm talking about as an organization, in a position to be able to harness and properly leverage the capability of these tools, you're actually not just succumbing to possible competitive activity, but you're putting your organization at a back foot in terms of cybersecurity, data protection, etc. And so when you talk about the posture of the organization, I think that those things are imperative for companies to think about.
Well, you never told me that story in private, Gerard, but I would say that it's scary to me that two people decided that they chose unemployment. They chose it rather than learn a tool.
Yes.
That is scary to me. But I would say that posture-wise, okay, obviously any organization that hopes to compete is not even competing internationally. Nationally, like it was said just now, AI is being used by most staff, most people, most students already. So anybody who isn't using it is behind. So I would say nationally there is no choice. People have to learn to use it, and it is honestly not hard to use. It is hard to get a large language model to prompt exactly what you want, but there's training for that. But the basics, edit this, like I do it all the time. I hate writing formal letters of recommendation. My writing style is like horribly flamboyant, like ridiculous. You see it in the papers regularly. So I actually cannot write a normal letter without being bored. So I just write my outline. I let it write. A lot of job recommendations from me is AI driven, because it's the most boring thing to write, you know. I would say positionally, in your dilemma, Gerard, you would need, of course, we have to adopt it, but simultaneously we have to find ways to make the training easier to onboard new people, because we can't leave behind a large section of the population either.
Well, I just want to weigh in on that last point you made in terms of leaving a large population, a large section of the population behind, because there is a digital divide. It's very real. And I thought I knew about it, but then the digital divide is not only in terms of socioeconomic, it's also in terms of age group. So therefore you have the older persons who are being asked and requested to do their online banking, and they still have trouble in terms of signing into an email address, right? And so the banks, they try to work around this in terms of these individuals still prefer to come into the bank in order to see their money. And that's okay. My mother is one of them, right? But they ideally should be brought on board in terms of the digital world. How do we do that? How do we bring them on board? How do we bring, yes, those that are not as well off socioeconomically, who don't have a smartphone that allows them to access the internet, even if they access it when they're going out and they log in with someone else's free internet. How do we get them to know how to access public services online? I mean, they say, I think I have an okay brain, and sometimes it's intimidating for me as well, right? So how do we make the digital world less intimidating for those that are on the other side of the digital divide? How do we make it less intimidating and more accessible?
All right, so I will throw a pebble into the pond. People are emotional beings, first and foremost. And most change management textbooks will tell you that people will generally reject changes that they were not a part of, even if those changes are in their best interest. There is a danger in imposing changes on people anywhere. But let's consider the society that everybody in this room knows, which is Trinidad and Tobago. So we spoke about the digital divide problem. We haven't spoken about the financial inclusion problem. We haven't spoken about the problems of the unbanked and the underbanked. We are not considering that there is, and if you think about our crime situation is an underclass that over time created its own rules because it did not exist or fit in with mainstream society. So there's this whole other place that maybe some of us can relate to and maybe some of us can't, that has a different set of rules. And now we are throwing, I don't have a bank card. I don't have a bank account. I wear big gold chains as my way of saving. That's my way of investing. It's around my neck, it's mine. And now you're telling those people, so if TSTT was in the room, they would be telling you that we have a digital currency launching later this year. And there are, I believe, 3 or 4 other digital money issuers who have already gotten central bank approval. And if we drill and we pong and we chip away, we will realize that there's a real danger that some people, and this brings us back to the city element, even though I don't think we can safely get out of the corporate element yet. At the city level, at the citizen level, at the user level, some of our people already don't fit into how we do business. And now we are adding another layer of complexity, another layer of compliance, another layer of behavioral pressure, another layer of social pressure. To what extent? And I mean, it's a question, not so much for an answer, but a question to provoke thought. To what extent is the digital transformation exercise and the smart city development exercise widening a social divide? And what can we as education, I know it's a mouthful of a question or a mouthful of a thought train, but what can we as education, private sector, and HR, and HR is important because whether it's formal or informal, that's what runs your country. Our institutions, our businesses, they are run by people who are trained or figure out how to harness human resources to get to business or developmental goals. Where are the lines, and is this actually important? Because the heart of the question for us, of the Smart City Charter question is, how can we inclusively develop? Who wants to pick this up? Who wants to get the battle?
So I hear the question, and it is a concern. And it is a very real concern that we're dealing with at COSTAATT at this point in time. We are in the process about moving COSTAATT to being a cashless campus by June 2025. That's a big ask. Not so much of a big ask in terms of our internal systems, but in terms of the public that we serve. Some of them are unbanked. They pay their tuition fees cash. So then how do we make arrangements for that? So in order for us to be a cashless campus by June 2025, we are now in the process of working with financial institutions to help these unbanked persons become banked. In addition to that, we're working with other financial institutions to help them reach out to individuals who may not be comfortable using the tech. So it would be skills training, but skills training at a very entry level in terms of how do I open or create an email address? How do I do basic things online? How do say basic things online, that for us is normal, but for them would not be something that they usually do on a daily basis. So it is about providing access to that training. It's about providing access to include them into the digital economy. And it is also about giving them the tools that they need or access to the tools. So if persons don't have smartphones or they don't have computers or laptops at home, how can they access that? Is there a place within the city that they can go to when they actually do need to do business so that they can log on and check their account or check whatever it is that they need to check? These are the things that we need to be doing. And from an educational and a higher education standpoint for us, it is about facilitating that learning process and then trying to see how we can provide access to those tools that they need in order to access the digital world.
Okay, so when Fayola mentioned the move to COSTAATT towards a cashless campus, it reminded me of an organization that I worked with some time ago. We were moving towards being cashless and found that many of our customers across the country didn't bank their money, right? They had no email addresses, no banking facilities, so no card to swipe, no credit card, no bank cards. Actually preferred to keep their money in a safe at home. I wouldn't say under a mattress, in a safe at home, or in their business places, etc. And for us to achieve going cashless, because it was an imperative for us for security for our employees, there was a whole process of us as an organization taking responsibility to work with these clients, these customers, to train them, to help them open email accounts. A lot of the things that Fayola just mentioned that, working with the students to do. But as an organization, wanting to move in a direction such as that, having to take on that responsibility to get their customers educated and facilitated so that they would be able to continue conducting business. And quite honestly, we did lose some customers because there were persons who just did not. I'm not putting my name on no computer thing for people to find out my business. I am not putting my money in the bank because then I was get robbed and so forth. So we did lose some customers, and it is a shame. And that just speaks to the fact that there's so much more work to be done, not just on the education side, but just national. Yeah.
Thank you. Bhagan? Okay. So I don't want to make the same mistake that many of our institutions make, which is not consulting. So, now that we've had a conversation and a taste of the topic, and it probably whets the appetite for some internal dialogue, I would like to open the floor, because it's not every day that you have the opportunity to ask questions or have conversations with an academic or an academic leader, an attorney at law and AI journalist of note, HR consultant of note, and somebody who pays attention to a number of different things. So I think it's an ideal time to put your questions into the zeitgeist. And yes, Mr. Matheson, I see any finger there?
Good night to the members of the panel. Very interesting conversation. And I think that we are having this conversation in a very appropriate time. But, you know, when we think of it, when we think of how things evolved in the world, we would note that most change took place as a result of some kind of upheaval, you know, and the upheaval in this case was COVID for us. It kind of accelerated the need for what is happening now. But when I was growing up, my parents told me that I learned that the parents is the head of the household. And in Trinidad and Tobago, the government is the change leader to some extent. You know, I always, as a consultant myself, I always wonder why things take so long in Trinidad with just 1.3 or 4 million people. When we have companies in the world with more employees in it than we have citizens in Trinidad and Tobago, and they know everything about the employee on a real time, touch of a button, HRIS systems, and you know, that kind of thing. So the problem, well, not problem, but I heard you all spoke about a lot of things, but one of the things that we always think of, or what should always happen in changes like these, and you spoke of it with change management models and things, is buy-in. And every single panelist spoke about why the majority, or a great part of the majority, would not want to accept the change that we need to move forward. And that relates to how people see their own security, how people see the culture, how people see things that are changing around them and how it does not affect them. There's a very large informal economy in Trinidad and Tobago who will always prefer cash with everything, who would always prefer, and all those things would be some of the things that would create challenges towards this kind of system. And we have to change must start from the top. So they have to make those kind of changes with us as citizens, and then everything will flow smoothly. So this is a very good discussion, but you know where it has to happen.
So I'd just like to comment on your, comment and question. I would say regarding change happening from the top, Trinidad does not have a properly functioning Data Protection Act. I can actually give you a university citation where some law student wrote a long article about how we do not have exactly what I said, a Data Protection Act in force. And even if it was fully enforced, it's several years behind the standard in Europe, the GDPR. We do not have a proper cybercrimes bill or a cybercrimes unit that functions properly. I actually know a lot of young women that sue the cybercrimes unit for failing to act, because there's a group of young women who started an NGO, most of them went to law school. Their photos from when they were like teenagers were leaked, and there's a lot of sick predators who just have hard drives full of millions and millions of photos of Trinidadian girls. And that's being reshared constantly. And they have the full evidence of the people sharing it, names, phone numbers, and gave it to cybercrimes. For years, they did nothing. So cybercrimes got sued and they lost the case. So security-wise, there is a serious gap in security, a gap in legislation. So yes, change starting from the top. Yes, it needs to start from the top, I agree. And the top is not doing its job. Again, as a lawyer, I am surprisingly one of the few lawyers who like tech. I use AI every day with my NVIDIA DLSS graphics card. So to me, yeah, I play in my game, I learn about all these things in seconds versus the average lawyer. The AG's office has full of people, I mean, no offense to you, many of you are senior to me, no offense to you, full of people who don't really get the tech. Because they don't get the tech, they are averse to passing a proper cybercrimes bill, focusing on the smart city aspects, focusing on the AI, and then it starts from the top. And of course, most people did law because they didn't like maths and they didn't like computers. I mean, just to be honest, a lot of them. My partner, my senior in the chambers is missing, but she was one of the few who also is good with tech. But yes, so any other comments?
Good night to everyone and to the panel. So it's more of comment as well as, I would say, small question. So the comment first is that, again, I have to echo the thoughts of my fellow attendee. You know, it is timely for this conversation to start to evolve. I think it's really good that we have started the ball with the conversations. I think we need a little more stakeholders, definitely, to be present to start to really hear and be intrigued and be encouraged. But I definitely like the fact that we are willing to engage in these kind of conversations and seeing the works that have already started behind the scenes, so to speak, because I know definitely when you brought up the point of saying the robot in the hospital, I knew about it as well, and having those kind of conversations with, you know, your fellow peers and stuff, and people are amazed because they aren't really aware. So again, awareness, I believe there's still some work to be done in getting the larger population to know the work that is actually going on with digital transformation, as the academic has mentioned, you know. So definitely that is good. What I say with the question is, I want to know from any one of you all, from the sectors that you all reside within, is in the essence of what is being done with respects to the perception of trust. Because I heard a lot of the different challenges, but definitely what is the framework that is being anchored within to try to get the buy-in from people or the public to have that trust, because I'm seeing that as one of the core paramount points. When I was doing my own dissertation, and I was kind of trying to find out why people, as in small businesses for m-commerce, it's a trillion-dollar sector. And I say using the phone just to get people to buy in. And I say people in Africa, how people will look and perceive them. But they are adopting and they were using it. And I'm like, why it is we kind of like lagging and we use the cell phone so much? And this is such an industry, m-commerce. So not to stray, but to allow you all to answer, what is being done, if there's anything, or what is the framework to have that perception of trust get back into our hearts, or at least in the minds of people? Thank you.
Okay, much appreciated, and this is something that I can speak directly to, and I'm going to ask because we're going to take one more comment. So let me, yes? But let me throw my voice into this particular fray because it's one of the core services of GNC Labs, which is our private sector organization that deals with services surrounding AI adoption and AI implementation. The number one problem is that business people are not talking about tech. The business people, they're talking about everything else. They're talking about money and the government taking long to pay and what going on with the election, and there all sorts of things in the zeitgeist about what's going on in business. But I, as a business owner, am not talking with another business owner about what we're going to treat. Come back to the same question we asked earlier, what's the posture? And some business people may believe in their simplicity. Well, if the computer could do it, I mean, I could have less workers. And that is precisely where, because we have a climate, and I mean, I am one of the industrial relations guy, I mean, very junior to some of the senior people. But that is the posture of employers, isn't it? Employers, generally speaking, have been looking for ways to not be good to their people. So when employees live that experience, they may be asking themselves, what does my future look like when the boss figure out that this tech changes everything? And That is actually a terrible way to grow a business. But we don't have very sophisticated culture within our family business class. And a few of the consultants and a few of the different types of people in the room know this to be true. Sometimes they are a bit backward in their thinking. We have to evolve the conversation first among business leaders and business owners, because the human resource element is not going away. And I have some bad news for somebody. If you think that we go into AI or tech away jobs in any particular quantity, and the public is just going to sit around and like, well, word, I don't think it's going to work out that way. Having an inclusive future, having a future where people have a space in it, is critical to our long-term viability. Retooling, so that's a COSTAATT conversation, and that's an HR conversation. Retooling people so that they know where they fit. They know that there's a future. They know, for instance, at some point in Jonathan's life, he knew that he had to go and do A-levels and do O-levels and go to UE and go Hewitt and go and do other classes because he was going to be a lawyer and it had a dollar in it. So it's something that he could work towards. Young people do not know what they are going to be working towards and what their future looks like in this digitally transformed economy. And the start of solving that problem is business people and business leaders speaking, having conversations about their need to digitally transform and they need to carry people along for the ride. So that is my 2 cents from an experience point of view, because I am in the boardrooms with the CEOs and the leadership teams on a fairly regular basis, helping them make sense of this conversation. And it is not a simple conversation, but like every business conversation, if you commit to having it and commit to having meaningful results for our businesses and our organizations, all sorts of magical things happen. So our last commenter, Ms. Draper.
Hi, good evening to everyone. So I just have 2 brief comments that I would make. Firstly, with respect to the technology, business, school-wise, it all comes down to the issue of adoption and the ability of individuals to, 1, want to adopt the technology, and then 2, to go out, do some homework, some research, find out what is out there. I remember when the cell phone first came into being, and I was one of those that said, I don't want that. I don't want to be able to have to check email, or no, I will check it on my computer. No, I was making notes on my cell phone just now. So it is a part of us. So it is all about adoption, and we will adopt something if and when we see the need for it in our everyday lives. It also comes down to education. So the more we feed information to the public about what the technology can offer, about how it can help, about how it can revolutionize things that we do, then you would find more and more people being amenable to the idea. Not to say that they will automatically jump on board, but at least they will be amenable to the idea to listen to what you have to say. My second comment has to do with COSTAATT directly, as a mother of a current COSTAATT student, right? Now, my son is now a first-year student in COSTAATT. He's doing his associate's degree. He is of the generation of students that came out of COVID. So he was in Form 2 going into Form 3 when COVID hit. So he is accustomed to everything technology. He is accustomed to doing everything on a phone, on a tablet, on a PC. So now for him, when he first started in school, I remember one of his teachers was complaining that they were taking all the information from online and putting it down and writing essays with it. Last term, he did one of his courses, and they had a debate on the ethical value and use of AI, right? And I remember passing one day, seeing all I saw on his computer screen was AI, and I lost it, right? I was like, don't tell me you using AI to write an essay again, and blah, 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 blah. And he said to me, Mommy, I am doing research. So we have to be open to the information. We have to be willing. And as a parent, I have to change my mindset because that's where the world is going. And as a professional, I also have to be willing and open to accept that in my workplace, AI will now have a place. Thank you.
I just want to say a couple of things before I lost my train of thought. You both made very salient points. And the thing is that fear is a hell of a thing. And fear of the unknown is even more a hell of a thing, right? So without, there's a lot of question and fear around AI replacing certain types of jobs and so forth. The World Economic Forum published its study that showed that there'd actually be a net increase in jobs. So whilst there will be a loss of some types of jobs, there will be creation of other types. And I think it's important for us, as part of that conversation, and as we prepare our young people as well, to understand what are the types of emerging jobs. And for persons who are in the workspace, to understand that AI is not necessarily going to replace them, but what is going to replace is people who understand how to use the technology. And if you understand how to use the technology and you understand how to leverage the technology, that you have a place in the future of work.
Just to piggyback off of what was just said, so your son's at associate's degree level, right? Well, it's okay for that level. So I'm doing the first thing I promised Gerard, I would beg everybody, please publish papers on artificial intelligence so I can cite you. Because I want to publish, but unless I want to spend thousands of US dollars on the nice textbooks that they're advertising, which I don't want to do that, I like to use the free, like when somebody does their PhD thesis and it's available free, yes, I get like 500 citations at the back to check over versus paying for things. So we have only like Renee Cummings and 2 or 3 Trinidadians publish anything. And Dr. Renee Cummings, it can't be the only Trinidadian in the world on AI. We need more. Well, me and Gerard are supposed to publish. But please publish. Because if I publish something without citations, I look like a fool. And then we need you to publish so I could cite you. And you all could cite me and then we're good. So first, that's the first thing. Second thing, once your son reaches undergrad and masters, you have to understand the current large language models. Their level of thinking is limited and they tend to hallucinate. And they also tend to misunderstand. There's bias and there's a misunderstanding of information. So his associates agree that's, not too complex, but once you reach complex stuff, the AI is going to get it wrong. You have to go find the source and read it for yourself. For an example, if you read it's somewhat political and scandalous point, but if you read my column for Guardian on Tuesday, I pointed out, okay, everybody was blind to Trump's victory 2024, 2028. All he has to do is maintain his voter base and he wins again. And more than like, so one of my data points was there's a version of Christianity called Orthodoxy. That's like they left the Catholics in 1054 AD. I studied theology on the side. And so the Russian church, the Greek church, the Ethiopian church, the Orthodox. And they have had, so there's one data point that says a 74% increase in 2022 of new converts. And then there's a next data point that said they went from 750,000 to 6 million in 4 years. The second data point was AI getting it wrong because the AI, it just sucks up all the data on the internet and then interprets it, and sometimes it reads it wrong. So apparently, I'll have to watch a video. So human intelligence will never be replaced because humans know how to interpret reality. So the bishop pointed out that The 6 million figure is an old figure that when they're begging for rights from the US government, they would say there are 6 million of us. But that counts everybody who is of Ethiopian origin, everybody of Russian origin, who is born that way but may not go to church. So the AI didn't know that it was an old figure and gave me that as a new figure. The AI gets it wrong. So we have to keep in mind that there's no replacement for human brains as probably ever. Because even the day we get, so this big data point for AI, artificial general intelligence and artificial super intelligence, where it becomes as smart as us, as smart as the smartest people in the world, and then smarter. Even then, it's going to make mistakes. We're still going to have to check it. So, we're unbiased. We need to, well, some private sector entity like Ansel McCall or somebody needs to fund a Trinidadian AI that speaks our language and knows our culture, because there's bias. And when you're coming, there's a lot of research showing that whatever racial bias is in the data is then amplified, and the model is not, the computer is not a racist. But if you give AI 1 million white faces and only 10,000 colored, African, Indian, whatever, indigenous faces, the AI model is going to be biased. It's not his fault, it's that the data was bad. So we need our own data, and else we will be, that's the danger, that we do not want to be left behind. So,
there's a micro question from Mr. Michael.
Hi, I know that you indicated that they were only taking one more question, but I don't know if you could indulge me for just a few seconds. Listening to everyone tonight, what I do realize is that no one wants to address the elephant in the room. All right, we talk about government top-down and so forth. What I will say is that no one has been able to capture the national imagination since 1962. All right, and the reason why I start there is that there is something called the Trinbagonian or Trinidadian diaspora. And if you look at the digital divide in this country, it is because the persons that have been able to capture the imagination of their children are the ones in, whether you want to call them the 1%ers, the upper middle class, middle and lower middle class. They have been able to keep the dream alive in their children. And what do I mean by that? I mean that they have always inculcated in their children that they are Trinidadians and they could be anything in this world. And so they have educated their children to get off this plantation. And all the people who are doing anything in this country right now, whether it be in carnival, whether it be in business, whatever, they are the returning children from that diaspora. Facts. And they bring with it that mentality that is able to take the nation forward. Problem is, we as a people continue to elect people who have no vision whatsoever across the political divide, whether UNC, PNM, or whoever. And so we are unable now, we're just all waiting for this cataclysmic event that the oil and gas run out and what we're going to do. But the signs are all around us. The reason why there's a currency shortage is because everybody is heading out. The reason why there isn't any growth in Trinidad is all of the major conglomerates are investing outside. Ansel McCall is not going to do anything for us. They're investing in bleach in the United States. You have Neil and Massey investing in a whole range of groceries in the United States. That's where the growth is. So what is going to happen in this whole rebooting the city and humanity is that we are going to continue to have a brain drain, and all that is left is the people that are left behind on this little rock or two rocks. And unless somebody stands up in our own individual worlds and say, hey, enough is enough. Unless we fix corruption, we're not going to fix anything. It is not in the interests of the politicians in this country to have a Data Protection Act. It is not in their interests to have financing laws for political parties. It is not in their interest to do anything, because as long as the oil and gas flowing, they could continue the way we go in. And so development is not by vision, but is by VAPs. So we could talk AI all we want. Business is going to drive innovation. It's not the politicians. Business is going to drive it. And unfortunately, a lot of people are going to be left behind. All right? But we should not allow that to happen. That must not happen. That cannot happen. And therefore, it means every citizen who understands the importance of an email address have to teach the younger ones. We have to go back to I was just talking to my good colleague here about the old-time ways in the context of adopting children. Adopt a child. They have them in our communities, adopt a child and just teach them what you know. If they know half of what you know, they're ready for the world. But you see, everybody we just waiting for the oil and gas to run out, and then we don't know what we're going to do, And so unless we have a vision, we're going to perish. Gentlemen like Mr. Llanos, they inspire me because they have a vision. There's a part of them that wants to give back. And so I could talk all night. There's so many things running through my brain right now. But Miss Cummins, it's Cummins you use, right? She's a child of diaspora. She and her entire family were educated here in the best schools here and then sent outside. All right? And some of them don't want to come back because the truth is we're not really doing anything here, We're not doing anything in Trinidad. We're teaching people how to fill jobs in COSTAATT, in UE, in School of Business. When you can use AI to generate and create stuff that if you put that on the world market, you don't need oil and gas.
Mr. Michael, I want to not lose something that you said, and it's a great place to close.
And so I leave, oh God, sorry.
Oh God.
I leave it there. So,
look, hold on, I come in. I want to thank everybody for giving us your ear and your brain space. Mr. Michael said something about oil. Jonathan, was in your oil again?
The new oil is data.
So what we are doing as a country and as a region, when we start to experiment with digital transformation and the creation of smart cities, is we are opening new oil fields. We don't know what that future looks like, but that future is bright if we let it be. The opportunity in this moment is to not only embrace the technology and the elements around us as investments and development, like another drain or another road. That's not development. Development is people. Development is youth. Development are communities. Development are people who are developing careers within organizations and contributing to our economy. And it's important, and I'm not here to tell you that we have the answers tonight, we don't. I am not here to tell you that the people who are spearheading these things are getting them right or wrong. They are trying. And what we have to do is sound the alarm when we go into another round of potentially not people-centric enough development. Because at some point, Mr. Michael pointed it out, somebody said, I have a dream. And it may not have been the dream that they could have seen in their lifetime, but they set the tone for people who turned out to be terribly successful. And what we need to do is do that again in 2025 and create that ecosystem of success for young people, alignment with success in business, alignment for success in communities. So this is the first of many, I am grateful for your time, your attention, and your energy. I appreciate deeply our panelists who have taken of their time and shared their expertise on this matter. I appreciate COSTAATT and Ms. Nicholas giving us their attention and their energy. Big love. Mr. Bhagan, always insightful. My chambermate at Titan Chambers, and definitely a leader in his community at every turn. Thank you so much, Mr. Bhagan. And Miss Wilson, a tireless servant of our community and our nation, of the profession of HR. I can't thank you enough for your ongoing support and HRMATT's ongoing support in the things that we are doing to reach people and reach communities. And there are many organizations here that are represented. Some people I am meeting for the first time, some people are new friends, some people are old friends. And we all need each other to get to this shared digital future, this shared bright future. On the whole, I believe that the Caribbean can be the best place to live, work, and play in the world if we all just work together. So, my thanks. Please accept our invitation to mingle. We still have some drinks left. We still have a little food left and some good people in the room. We thank you for participating in Smart City Chatter, and we wish everyone a happy carnival and a good night.